Hi, I'm RioForce. You might know me from YouTube as Luke Action Films. I am a fan of LEGO and stop-motion animator. I also tinker in computer-generated animation as well. I have been making videos since 2007 when I sat down in my living room with my dad's camera and started making a stop-motion film. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but most of the things I've learned over the years have been self-taught. This video is a tutorial to help beginners and experienced animators alike to learn, and maybe relearn, the basics of stop-motion animation. Let's get started. Stop-motion animation is the process of taking still images and playing them back in a sequence as a video. The catch is, the objects don't move by themselves like in normal filming. You actually have to move the object yourself. Simply, you move an object, you take a picture, move the object again, take another picture, and again. You keep doing that until you have enough frames to play in sequence as a video. There are many types of cameras that you can use for stop-motion animation. There's the DSLR, the webcam, and the standard point-and-shoot camera. I personally use a Nikon D3100 DSLR. For those who can afford a high-end camera, the DSLR is the way to go. My Nikon D3100 supports tethering, that's plugging in the camera into the computer to capture pictures. It also supports manual focus, manual white balance, manual exposure, and manual shutter speed. All those things also have automatic features, but it's good to have manual features when doing stop motion so you can control how your scene looks. DSLRs are fairly expensive, so if you are a beginner or want something more affordable, I recommend a webcam. Webcams are in a more reasonable price range, but don't just buy the cheapest one you find. You will need a webcam that takes good images and has manual focus settings. When I use a webcam, I use the Logitech Webcam Pro 9000. This webcam captures images directly onto my computer, has a good lens, supports manual focus, and can stand up quite well on its own. If you need extra support for your webcam, building a Lego brick base can help. If you don't feel like buying anything new, or already have a basic point-and-shoot camera, make sure it is secured tightly on the tripod. It always has fresh batteries. And make sure it is focused on every single frame. Focus can be tough with a standard digital camera because the autofocus never likes to go in the same place. Believe me, I know. I once made a 9-minute video with just a digital camera. Lighting is vitally important to your scene and your animation because it tells the mood of the scene and it provides light, obviously. If your video is too dark, people can't see it, and if it's too bright, it's all washed out. So, I use the 3-point lighting system. It's a standard lighting system used in professional films. The first light is called the key light. This light is the main light of your scene. It should be the brightest. It's always on the left and provides the main light for your scene. The second light is the fill light. This light fills in the dark shadows that would be produced if you did not have this. For example, if I only use the fill light, you'll notice that my scene has dark shadows. For example, right there. If I turn on the fill light, it fills in most of those dark shadows. And to prevent those dark shadows even more, I turn on the backlight, which is the third lamp. The brightness and the exposure of the film can be a show-stopping element if it is wrong. For example, would you like to watch this video if its exposure is way too high? Or would you rather watch it if it's way too low? where you can't even see anything. That's why we try to make sure that the exposure looks good and is suitable for your scene. If you're making a nighttime scene, you probably want your scene to be darker. For example, I would turn down the exposure just a bit, and the gain, and the brightness, well, not the brightness too bad, because that blacks it out. But I would turn down the exposure and the brightness just a little bit, and it would make it look like a nighttime scene, like this does now. The brightness has a lot to do with the scene, because it can, just like exposure, it can wash it out, and it can make it too dark. So you want to keep that about middle. Contrast is also a big issue. Too much contrast looks really weird, and not enough contrast makes everything gray. You want to have an even contrast level. Oftentimes, the contrast is not enough, and it makes the film, it just makes it look really bad. So you need to even out your brightness and contrast values. Color intensity, or saturation, is another factor that causes ugly videos. For example, the saturation is all the way up. In this one, it's sort of grainy around here, and colors are really weird. And if the saturation is all the way down, well, that's a black and white video. If you're going for a black and white video, that's okay. But try to make sure that your saturation is in a good value for your scene. And white balance. White balance makes your lamps either look yellow or bluish. A bluish is sort of a cooler tinted look that makes it look like it's kind of cold outside. And a orange makes you think that it's really hot. So you want to keep that about the middle, unless your scene needs a different one. I use my computer to capture photos from my camera. Pressing the shutter release button on your camera might make your camera shake, and that's not good for stop motion. So the best thing to do is to do it remotely. Sometimes you can use a remote if you have one for your camera, or what I do is I plug in my camera's USB cable into my computer. I use a process called tethering, which lets your camera be controlled by your computer. I use a software called Digicam Control, which is a free and open source software. I have provided a link in the description. If you are using a webcam, I recommend Monkey Jam. If you are running Windows 7 or Windows 8 and don't have the old version of Windows Movie Maker on your computer, I have provided a link in the description where you can download and install it. It's directly from Microsoft, so it's really safe. I use free software called Audacity for all of my recording. I have included a link in the description if you would like to download it. Audacity is a very simple program to use. All you have to do is click record and talk into the microphone. Setting up your camera is fairly easy as long as you make sure it has good stability when you're done. I use a tripod. It's the best thing to use unless you're using a webcam. Then you'll either have to build a base to set on your table, like a mini Lego tripod type thing, for example, or you'll just have to set your webcam on the table. This tripod, you see, has an elevator lift on it, so whenever I set it on the ground, I can pull it up and position it without having to readjust the legs. It's much easier when you're positioning your camera. My camera, or this tripod, if you'll notice, has a hole in the top, and it comes with this little adapter that you can keep on your camera, so that way you will not have to keep screwing it on and off of the tripod. All you have to do is clip it on. Adjusting your tripod is easy. This knob here makes it go up and down. Loosening the knob makes the up and down looser, and tightening it stops it. This other knob on the other side, right here, makes it rotate left and right very easily. If you tighten it, your camera will not rotate left and right. You will need to tighten these knobs during stop motion so you do not bump the camera and swivel it any. Now don't bump the camera anyway, but just in case, you need to keep these tight. If you need to move your camera, always loosen them before you do.